Good day to you. One of the things you learn when you travel around to other parts of the world is that the produce in Pennsylvania during certain times of the year is not exactly fresh. I'm talking about the winter months, and I'm even talking about in some of the summer months, and that's because the stuff that you're eating is getting picked miles and miles away in other states and then delivered through trucks that are driving for days before they arrive in Pennsylvania. Except if you're part of a cooperative. Do you know what a cooperative is? Yeah, it's a kind of eating where you pay into a farm and that farm uses the money that you pay into to help its operations, to pay for the people who harvest the crops and pay for the seeding and the irrigation and if any pesticides are used, hopefully not. But that's what a cooperative is about. It's where the people are paying into it. And then as a result, you get to share in the goods. You get to share in the Brussels sprouts and the tomatoes and the corn and the green beans and everything else that gets harvested at a much lower cost. That's what a cooperative is all about. And that's what this chapter is trying to be all about as we take on our very final chapter in Critical Perspectives on Social Media Use. We're taking on chapter 15. Please note we are jumping ahead on a couple chapters. It's about a manifesto for a truly social media. It's a manifesto for a truly social media. Most of the class, if not all of it, we've been talking about the problems with social media that are structured within a capitalist platform. We've been doing a political economy analysis the whole class to talk about these problems of the abuses of pay, the worker conditions, the time that people are spending on the internet, the lack of self-esteem, and even physical harm that occurs in the case of anorexia and other problems that have been identified throughout the research that we're taking a look at. Now, in this final class, we're taking a look at what an alternative might look like. An alternative is a co-op. That's an idea that the author is advancing that we could have out there for our social media use rather than the current model that we just have now. And there's another chapter that we didn't get a chance to take on in this class if you're really interested. It's the chapter, I think it's chapter 13 on Wikipedia. If you really want to read further in this subject, take on the chapter on Wikipedia. So this is what we're looking at in the Manifesto for Truly Social Media. I'm not going to be discussing everything in the chapter because I want you to really get that information from Christian Fuchs. I'm going to be summarizing and highlighting so that you can really do the necessary reading and groundwork mentally so that you can answer the discussion question. So we've got Robert Gell as one of the early researchers that is being introduced, and he said that what we're talking about when we're talking about a truly social media, because we did ask that question in the very beginning of the chapter, are media social? And we decided in a lot of ways media are not social because of the class differences that exist. And so what are a truly social media? They are a media that are two-way, so you're communicating to people as much as they're communicating to you. It's not just one way. You're not just the recipient of tweets that you're communicating back. It's two-way. It's decentralized, so there's no one central power source, no headquarters in Seattle, no one person who makes decisions. It's decentralized. It's free. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything to use. And it has open source software. It's not proprietary software. It's not the iOS software. It's not Android software. It's open source software. That's what a truly social media would be like. Is a park truly for the public if certain people are not allowed to enter a park and take a walk? No, it's not. And that's what we're talking about here. Essentially what we want in a truly social media is equal capacities for everybody, equal capacities to both transmit and receive information. It's really that simple. So now let's get into what platform cooperatives are. Platform cooperatives are where users and workers both own and control the cooperative. They make the decisions together. There's no hierarchy in essence. It's both the workers and the users, and we know that in a prosumer model, which we're trying to break open here, that people can be both users and they're also creating content as well, though we won't call them consumers because that defeats the idea of a cooperative. It's not about making money. So Schletz and Schneider, they said that in a truly social media, you're going to have democratic ownership and governance. And in a democratic ownership and government structure, you have people who are representing others, and everybody has an equal opportunity to access the decision making. That's what a democracy is all about. So within the system, you would have shared profits. It's not just going to be the owners and the stockholders that are benefiting and then deciding whether they're going to pass on dividends. Everybody shares profits. There will be cooperativism, which means that people cooperate with each other as an essence rather than competing with each other within the system. And in essence, it would be a people's internet. If you want to think of it that way, it certainly isn't a people's internet right now. Mauricio Sandoval is a researcher who says, furthermore, that a cooperative internet cannot invest in venture capital like you have right now with Facebook and Google. They're also investing in venture capital. You know what venture capital is, right? It's to inject money into a startup company that needs it, and then that company is allowed to take off. If you watch the Shark Tank, right, you can see that that's what these people are. They're venture capitalists. But once you get into that, you lose control of where your money is going and what it's being used for. And so that's not what a cooperative is about. Rosa Luxemburg says that it's just impossible for cooperatives to compete with these global capitalist corporations. It's just impossible. They get swallowed up. They can't get their message out. She's kind of pessimistic about the potential success. She says that really cooperatives are fine. Digital platform cooperatives are fine if they work mostly at the local level. They're just occurring within a local community geographically. The author Christian Fuchs, though, he is much more determined to make the internet a different place where it's not controlled by the political economy of class capitalism that is currently controlling the social media that we access. And he's arguing for a movement towards a class struggle co-op, towards class struggle co-ops, plural. And that means that co-ops should engage not just in allowing people to share information, but they should engage in a struggle against the power of capital. They should engage in a struggle against the power of capital, that they should in fact engage in unionizing the people, the workers who are using them. They should engage in workers' rights and working conditions, how many hours a day you work on the internet, what your posture should be when you're sitting in a chair, how long you should be staring at a screen, whether the screen should be blocking out blue light. These are all questions that we really haven't asked, and yet we're on the computer and the phone almost all day long. And this is so really, the co-ops, they need to be radical. They need to be like a radical political movement, and that term is not used in the sense to saying it's upending all of the stability in life. It's saying that it's radical if it's outside of the mainstream, right? And that's what you're doing. You're using the co-ops, the social media platform co-ops, to struggle against all the inequities that exist. The people who are working every single day on Facebook and Google and you're not getting a penny, and the people who are making money, the social media influencers, and the chances, the PewDiePies and the two brothers, I can't remember right now, the boxer Jake and the Paul brothers. They start out with some benefits that the average person does not, and that's because the way that social media is structured it's a capital accumulation model that's structuring it and doesn't lend itself to equality and to equal access. And so alternative media is what we're talking about here. Alternative media that are of this cooperative venture where people who are the workers and also the producers of the content and also the takers in of the content, not consumers, they are the ones who are also owning and controlling the content. There are examples of these out there. You can take a look at the Fairmundo company in the UK. It's a company that's built up as a cooperative. You can Google that if you want. The Resonate company, it's another company. It's an alternative to Facebook that's out there. They haven't taken off, right, because they're in this sea of capital accumulation. Is very tough to break through. And so what Fuchs says is necessary for the cooperative model of social media to break through is to join forces with public institutions, with public service institutions, which already have a tremendous amount of resources and funding and history of being established as independent places that are in the public service interests. They are not for making money, they are for serving the public good, a greater good, so to speak. And so these public institutions would be libraries, museums, and universities. That's where cooperative media platforms should be linked up to. And eventually what we will get to is a public service internet, Public service internet, a public service YouTube is maybe the way that we could think of it, where topics are discussed on YouTube that are important to democracy, not just topics that are discussed to merchandise and to sell products. And it would not be commercial, this public space where people can go into and create videos and discuss with others even though you're not in the same room with them. It should be out there, right? But you're not really doing that. Where do you go for that? There is no place. There's YouTube. That's a money-making capital accumulation model. You're not going to get your stuff seen unless you promote it, unless you get it to be sponsored, until you work on it and get it liked and get it promoted out there on social media. You can take a look at Club 2.0. It's a good example of an Australian program that gets across what a public service YouTube type video distribution platform would look like. Read about that, Club 2.0, in our chapter. And so our author, Fuchs, does end with 10 principles that describe what he calls digital socialism. And he's reminding us that digital socialism is unfortunately going to be linked up with the use of that term that's associated with Stalin and Mao and all the dimensions of socialism that through our capital accumulation model we consider to be evil and dark and anti-capitalistic, anti-wealth, etc. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is a framework for society that moves society towards the good for all, not just some. It's the good for all. There are 10 different principles, one of which is to avoid techno-dialects. Dialect is when you have two opposites. And so what this principle is saying is that when we develop new technology that allows us to communicate, and in this case cell phones and tablets that allow us to engage in social media communication, we should neither glorify it as saying it's a panacea, it's going to solve all of our problems in the world. We'll never have to deal with security problems on the web. We'll never have to deal with children getting access to porn. It's not, on the one hand, a glorified new development, and nor on the other hand is it completely pessimistic. We've lost all of our rights. We've lost all of our freedoms on the internet. People will be addicted more than ever by video gaming. It's somewhere in the middle. That's what a techno-dialect is about. It's about avoiding going on to the extremes, and that's just one of the principles of what I hope you consider to be a different use of that term and different conceptualization of socialism than you might have otherwise considered by reading the terms in this book. And therein you're going to have the idea, as it could be trotted out, into a new way of framing social media platforms that don't cause the problems that we've been studying and revealing all semester long in this course. And that will finish up my final instructor video for the course. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the semester and finals week, and I look forward to speaking with you at some point in the future. Best of luck.